Hey, good morning, everybody. It's 7 a.m. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Let's do this. Today we're going to be talking about uh, parents and being good to parents and helping parents, taking care of parents, and that whole responsibility that we fall into. It's easier for some of us, a little harder for others. I think I was blessed. I was lucky. Um, I unfortunately didn't meet my dad, my biological dad, but I had my grandparents and my grandpa, who was a fantastic man and a great role model as a father. So I didn't feel like I needed a father. I didn't feel like I was lost without a father. I mean, there were certain things that my grandpa could not do because he was older and it was hard for him to, play ball, you know, teach me certain things, but um, he was fantastic. He was fantastic, and so I was blessed in that respect. My grandma was great. She was a little tough, but she was a good woman. Definitely a providing woman. She was a good provider, and my mom was fantastic and just a great supporter. So just want to put that out there that when I'm speaking now, I'm speaking from those terms, from that experience. So I don't know everyone's experience, obviously. So when I read the next chapter, which is number 5, precept number 5 from the Way to Happiness book right there by L. Ron Hubbard from 1981. Um, this is I'm speaking from that experience, just so you know. So, because I don't know. Sometimes, we had we have this weird kind of weird this undertone on parents that it kind of goes through society where it's like when we're teenagers, teenagers are supposed to hate their parents, right? That's part of the I don't know the lie, I would say, but um sort of the narrative that's been put out there. And teenagers are a pain in the ass, right? I mean, we all know that. Um, I was a teenager. I never hated my parents, so I didn't get to the point. It wasn't like no, I just never did. We were a loving family, but we had difficulties. I'm not trying to say like our lives were perfect. We had a lot of dysfunctional things going on in our growing up. But at the same time, it wasn't like, that whole cliche is the word that I was looking for, the cliche of the hating your parents and then as they get older, then resenting them for certain things. And, so there's that kind of cliche that I've always kind of resented. It's sort of like the same cliche of the husband and the wife where the husband's an idiot and the wife kind of knows. The commercials that always do that. My husband is such an idiot. I asked him to hang this camera, but and his husband's in the back going, well, I don't know how to do it. That's silly cliches of commercials, how they think husbands and wives are. And that might be true in my house, but still, it's not true at all. It's all BS. BS. All right, so let me get a sip of coffee here. I'm going to read this one. It's called Honor and Help Your Parents. Now, I'll read this and talk a little bit about. We'll talk a little bit, dive in. If anybody's out there listening, and you want to ask a question or you want to discuss this further, or you have a story you want to share or a statement, a comment, just type it into the chat box there. Anybody listening on the podcast later on, you can always email me at johnhenrysoto@protonmail.com. All right, so this is actually Honor and Help Your Parents, number 5. All right, so let's go. From a child's point of view, parents are sometimes hard to understand. There are differences between generations, but truthfully, this is no barrier. When one is weak, it is a tem- when one is weak, it is a temptation to take refuge in subterfuges and lies. It is this which builds the wall. Children can reconcile their differences with their parents. Before any shouting begins, one can at least try to talk. One, I'll give you that again. Before any shouting begins, one can at least try to talk it over quietly. If the child is frank and honest, there cannot there cannot help but be an appeal that will reach. It is often possible to attain a compromise where both sides now understand and can agree. It is not always easy to get along with others, but one should try. One cannot overlook the fact that almost always parents are acting from a very strong desire to do what they believe to be the best for the child. Children are indebted to their parents for their upbringing. If the parents did so, if the parents did so, he says. While some parents are so fiercely independent that they will accept no return on the obligation, it is nevertheless true that there often comes a time when it is the turn of the younger generation to care for their parents. In spite of all, one must remember that they are the only parents one has, and as such, no matter what, one should honor them and help them. The way to happiness includes being on good terms with one's parents or those who brought one up. So he says an interesting thing here. He says children are indebted to their parents for their upbringing if the parents did so. And it's interesting that he says that because it makes you kind of think like, it's not across the boards, right? Because sometimes, you have a set of parents that were, if your parents were not there for you or maybe didn't fully give you the support or the care that you needed, well, then that actually does become very difficult to then grow up and be like, I'm going to care for my parents because you just really resent them, right? Um, I think it was George Carlin that I heard talk about parents. I mean, I agree with some of the stuff he says, some of the stuff I don't, but he did say, parents should be honored based on their performance, on how they raised the child, how they treated the child, you know. And I think this is something that sticks with you through life, when you, if you have an experience, and I know this from other parents or from other people that I know who spoke to me about their parents, that their parents might have provided them a home, shelter, food, and an education, and that type of responsibility that the parent has, and provided that, but they didn't provide with encouragement, validation for good work, hugs, lots of hugs. I hug my kids all the time. All the time I hug my kids. And I'm going to talk a little bit about parenting on my end, to see if that provides any value. Um, but I've heard people talk about their parents and say that, what, they weren't really there for me. They didn't really give me what I needed, and maybe there's responsibility on both sides, or not. Maybe, obviously, there is responsibility on both sides, but um, if that's what you remember, right? Because I mean, I grew up and I know people are probably tired of me hearing this, but I don't give a shit. It's my show. But I grew up in the South Bronx, right? And South Bronx was rough, right? People were dying, people were getting shot. By the age of 15, I had witnessed like at least 5 murders already, about 4 murders, about 4 actual murders or shootouts where people have died. Well, I guess they're murders, right? um, and that's by the age, so I knew the value of life, and I knew um, how important it is to have a good, safe place to go to, a home. But at the same time, my parents were very on top of me, making sure, my grandparents and my mom, making sure that I wasn't out in the streets too late, or that I wasn't with the wrong crowd, or they wanted to find out where I was, what I was I doing. They were just involved in my life. And I think that that's a big part of raising children, is to not let them just kind of go off and grow up without you being part of it, that growing up, because especially with school, kids will grow up in school. They're there for 8 hours a day, right? 9 hours a day sometimes, if there's after school programs or whatever. So you're not raising them, right? The school is raising them, and whatever kids that they hang out with, that's their example of how to behave. So if they go with the wrong crowd, they're just going to see that as like the cool way. That's just, this is my accepted way of being, you know. But if you're really involved in their lives, and you're like, oh, who you're hanging out with, who's that person, and ask questions, and you don't have to be like, who's that, who the hell is that? You don't have to ask like that. You can just ask, hey, honey, who's that you were talking to? Who were you hanging out with? I've had that conversation with my daughter, because she's going to be 10 years old next month. And she's online, and she plays these, Roblox, and she plays those games, and then she chats with people. I know everyone she chats with. I have protection on that account. It comes to my, I'm aware of it. I don't spy on her, because I trust her, but at the same time, I want to know who she's talking to. And I'll ask questions. Who is that? And I know everyone. Yes, a child can pretend, a child can lie. I just give her the benefit of the doubt, and I just feel in my heart that she does trust, knows that we trust her, and that she would come to us if there's, if she needs anything. She's definitely being raised by us. We're very involved in her life. We have a great time. She's a big laugher, loves to laugh, and I love to make her laugh, because I'm a clown. um, and that part of it has really brought us together. So I mean, my parenting, skills raising, we're just going back for a second, people who actually talk about their parents, that's something that they have to kind of go back and try to figure out, like, because they might have not given you exactly what you needed, but if they gave you the shelter, they gave you the food, and they made sure you got an education, and you had clean clothes, and you stayed away from the streets and didn't get in trouble, then they did a big part of it. Then it's up to you to go out and do something, you know, and be successful, right? Now, they might have been not encouraging. They might have invalidated some of your goals, or your interests, whatever, and that happens through life. Um, some parents are just don't understand, and I think we talked a little bit about it on the show I do with my wife on Sundays, Your Wholesome Journey show, that it's not really their fault. It might be the fact that they're trying to protect their child from being hurt. Maybe they don't want to be hurt. It's part of, a child is an extension of the parents, right? And that's something that, if they're hurt, I'm hurt. So because I don't want them to get hurt, maybe, a parent will say something to discourage a child, or to at least warn the child that you might get hurt. But there's certain ways of doing that, right? And that's just protection, right? And when you're protecting a child, you need to take into account that that child is going to remember everything that you said to them. Because I remember things that my grandparents said to me when I was 5 years old. I remember my mom saying things to me when I was young, or a teenager. Um, things that inspired me. Even uncles and aunts that said things. I remember a couple of uncles. It wasn't really an uncle; it was more of a family person that was in our family, saying something very negative to me once when I was probably about 10 years old, maybe 10 or 11 years old. And I remember it really stuck with me, and it really upset me. It didn't stop me, but it made me kind of it made me sad, I guess. It was the thing. Um, and then when there were a couple of uncles, again, not an uncle, just a couple of people that were families sometimes bring in people into the Latin Puerto Rican families anyway, bring in people into their families as family, and you grow up thinking that they're your family, and you realize later on, wait a minute, that's just some dude. And yeah, so that happens a lot. So anyway, this one particular person was just very not encouraging, and there was a few of them, a few of them that were actually family. Um, but again, the protection part of it is really important because they're trying to protect you, especially close parents. The other ones, maybe they're just trying to um, ruin things on purpose. You gotta look out for people, right? I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what anybody says in your environment, you have to be able to accept it, um, process it, come to a conclusion to say that this is a lie, this is not the truth, and really just put it out there, you know, and say, listen, I'm not really feeling what you're saying right now, so I'm gonna just not really do what you want me to do, or I'm gonna ignore that, or don't say that again, or whatever you communicate it if you feel confident enough that you can do that. But it's very important to understand that what anyone says is not your future just because they said it. It is just an opinion that they have. Only you can decide your future. Only you can create the path that you want to walk on. And for me, with my children, I want to make sure that they have a path that's their own, but that I help them find it. You know, because there's many paths that they can go down, and some of them might not. Might get them hurt. Now, I don't want to. I want to protect my children. I don't want them to be hurt. Especially if they go out into like if they want to go into this industry that I'm in, where you're judged constantly and people don't like you, and I get messages from people, and I continue to do different things, and I'm still going forward. I never stop. I make films. I play music. I live stream a lot, not just on these platforms, but I have other platforms where I'm a hired host where and I'm building another network right now, another uh, on another platform, a very exciting thing that I'm building on right now. Um, so I do a lot of things, and whether people are supportive or not, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to keep moving forward. But you want to protect your children. You don't want them to hear the things that I've heard. But you know what? They might have to hear those things. But if you prepare them for those things and you tell them, listen, there are people out there who are not so nice. They are going to try to make you feel bad. Why? Because they have certain insecurities of their own. They are maybe they failed at certain things and they don't want you to succeed because then it'll make them feel bad or look bad. Whatever the case may be, there are people out there who will try to discourage you and say things. If I can communicate that to my children and let them know that this is the case, so be prepared, and then it's okay for them to go out and be hurt. Somebody will say something because that's what life is about, right? Life is not about living in a bubble and protecting your children, so they never get injured and nobody ever says anything bad to them. And it just doesn't. Life is just not like that, especially if you want them to live and experience life and try new things and get involved in, if they want to get involved in this business, in the business of show, well then they're going to have to accept that this is the only business where you are constantly judged, because that is part of it. That is part of this business. Did you like the show? No. Did you like the show? Yes. Did you like that song? No. Did you like that song? Yes. That's the business, right? I liked some of it, but not all of it. I liked a little bit of it. You got to deal with all those comments and stuff. Um, and that's part of growing up, and I want them to have that experience so they can be able to deal with it moving forward. As they get older, they'll feel more confident and more stable in their decisions. Am I doing the right thing? I don't know. It feels like I'm doing the right thing. I feel like I'm actually encouraging them properly. My son is only 4 right now. He just wants to play Iron Man and be and hit me with his Thor hammer. um, so he's not there. He's not at that stage yet, but he does play with children, and there are lessons in the Marvel universe that I think that they can learn. The violence is, I think it's a little rough, but you know, I talk to my, I actually do a lot of this is something that I do with my son, so he understands about the Marvel universe because we watch that a lot here. It's kind of a big deal in the house for my son, and even for us. My wife and I watched. Well, I've watched all the films, and but I want them to understand that there is good and bad in the world, which is what the Marvel universe kind of shows, right? It does show characters that are good but still are flawed, right? Because there are good people who still have problems, right? They're not perfect, right? Um, and another thing that I want them to also, that the violence is not real in the movies. I want him to understand that. So I show him some YouTube's behind the scenes footages and show him how they do the green screen when they fly, and show him my green screen, and so he understands that this is actually just done for the storytelling and for the adventure of it, and it's more of a like a game that they're putting out there. I spend time, and again, this is where being involved in the child's life and that taking it seriously enough to know that you being there is going to help that child develop better. If you're providing them with love, care, understanding, and showing them certain things um, that will help them, and also answering questions. If they have any questions, answer those questions as well. So this is actually a really great chapter. There's a lot involved in it because it's two-sided. If you're a parent, then you can come from that side. If you have your parents still alive, you come from that side. So it's a definitely, we have parents, and some of us are parents. So this is something that really is helpful, and a really good chapter to consider. So anyway, that's number 5 of the precepts. We have 21 of these to go. Tomorrow is number 6, and tomorrow's precept is set a good example. So that's an interesting one. We'll talk about that. Setting a good example. Sometimes that's a tough one for me when it comes to, I guess, to social media. I think at home I'm okay, but that's going to be a fun one. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. So want to thank everybody for tuning in. I appreciate you. Hope you have a wonderful morning out there. I will see you. Um, and it's Monday, so yeah. So have a great week ahead. If you don't tune in for the rest of the week, um, I am here at 7 a.m. Monday through Fridays. Hopefully, with a little insight for you, a little valuable tools for you to take on, make you feel good. Maybe even a couple of jokes if I got them. And we'll start the week off together, and just continue to be there for each other. I appreciate you all. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. See you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. And as always, peace.